This next step I'm going to show you is very important if you're repairing a dent along an edge line, whether it be the top of the fender, the edge of the hood, the trunk. You want to do a trial fit before you do the final sanding. Now I've already blocked this final coat in a little bit, and I stopped because I said, I really should check the headlight fit. I thought, I really thought I had it right on. But when I put the headlight in, look here, there was just a little bit of area right there that was, the curvature was off. I mean, okay, you're saying, Kent, you're being too particular here, but I am shooting a video, so I'm trying to do a good job, all right? Give me a break. So I marked it with the Sharpie, and I removed the headlight and did a little more sanding. Now let's come back here, take a look at that gap. See the consistency of the gap? And I had to make sure I rolled right around on that point there. So that's about as good. It may even be a little bit better than factory. So I'm very satisfied now with the gap line. I won't be messing around with this edge. We'll be coming out here, and I'll get some of the sandpaper I'm using for this final blocking and come back, and we'll try to finish this up together. I've been sanding away on this fender here for about 15, 20 minutes, and I couldn't film it. I can't sand on this stuff and talk to you at the same time. I can't stress how important this is to wear this type of mask when you're working with this filler, not just sanding it, but spreading it. I have to confess, a couple scenes ago, I decided, I'm going to spread this on, and I want to be able to talk to you while I'm doing it, and I didn't put the mask on. And I thought, it's just a quick dent, won't be a problem. Well, I went home that night, and I'm like, ugh, and I didn't feel very good. So, pardon the fact that I may be skipping around here and jumping ahead, but anytime I'm doing sanding, I'm going to have this on. So you either will not hear me talk, or I'll have to come back after the fact and talk about what I did. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to explain some of the steps, some of the sandpaper I used right here to get it to where we are now. It's not finished, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But notice here, I moved the mask line back because, I've filled past the original guideline, and I've sanded out into the original paint. So I've moved the mask line back to where that's probably where I'll want to end the primer, by the way. And then, of course, I've gone ahead and covered the fender over with the masking paper because we're getting ready to close to being able to prime this. But I also want to show you, other than this face mask here, I want to show you this, because this is the other big thing that I think is real important, unless you're working outside. I generally, by the way, try to save my bodywork projects till spring and summer and fall so I can work outside. I mean, I like to work out in the wind, okay, but look at how, just for this small dent right here, look at how much dust has been collected in this furnace filler that I've been using on the backside of this fan. Look at this. I mean, it's just covered. Can you imagine if you're doing a whole fender or a whole door, how much dust you're putting into the air, both in and around your shop, garage, or whatever, but more importantly, in not putting it down into your lungs, okay? So once again, I'm stressing the safety aspect here. By the way, I'm going to take this outside with my mask on, and I'm going to beat this thing and clean this out before I do any more work here. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more here about exactly where I am with this dent and what sandpaper grades and blocks I've used to get it to this point. Once this final coat of filler had started to harden up, I mentioned I was only going to touch it with 80 grit and finer, and I by hand I just knocked that little top roughness off, and then I went to this 80 grit flat board here. That was primarily just to get it down to fairly flat. You can't really do much with a compound curve with a flat board like this, but if you sand diagonally at a 45 like this, very carefully, remember I didn't go around the corners here, I was just trying to block and get some flatness back. And once I did that, I immediately stopped with the 80 grit here, and I transitioned to this. It's pretty well torn up by now, but you can see I transitioned next to the 100 grit on this flexible board. And I showed you this earlier, and you can see how that flexes, and you can also get a little bit of curve. This is really ideal. Remember, you have a double compound curve here. You have it curving this way while it's curving this way, but it's also diving off here and rolling this way, and it's a little bit thicker on this edge here than it is down here. So this is one of the more difficult types of dents to do. And you know, you might be thinking, well, gee, how did you get that looking so good? Well, I've been sanding Bondo or body filler for years, so this comes with practice. You can read all the books you want, you can study about this until you get out and practice sanding body filler. You're not going to be able to fix a dent like this. It just takes practice. Okay, once I had, by that time I was running my scratches out into the original paint here. Once I had it almost, you know, ready down to where I wanted it, I stopped with the 100 and I transitioned to 180. Now, I know what you're thinking, well, why are you transitioning? Well, look, you got some scratches here. Those are scratches that obviously I over sanded with the 80 right in that area. That just means more filling or possibly multiple coats of primer, even using some glazing putty. So because I'm using spray can primer, this is real important to remember this, because I'm using spray can primer on this dent, you don't want a lot of deep scratches because the spray can primer will do what's called sand scratch swelling, and it'll shrink into the scratches. And 2 months after you paint the car, you'll see little teeny scratches start to come through. So that's why I'm being so careful. So I took the 180. Now, once again, I'm sanding like this, and I'm sanding like this. See that? I'm rolling the paper, and I'm bending the board, and then I'm constantly changing direction. I'm not just going like this, and I'm not just going like that. You cannot do that on these multiple compound curved dents, or you're going to end up with flat spots. Now, I think I'm close. Notice I've come out past my original guideline. I've got some area right here, but that isn't breaking through to the metal. If that were breaking through the metal right there, I'd have a high spot and a problem, but it's just breaking through to the factory primer. There's a little bit of factory primer. Look at this. Even out into the original paint, I've got a little bit of factory primer showing up, and also you can see here I've broken through the clear coat. So I'm actually blocking out probably some of the minor imperfections that were even in the factory fender, all right? So I'm ready. I think I'm close here. I've got a little more sanding to do, but there's a good way to determine whether or not I have any higher low spots left. Let's say you haven't developed the feel. You know, I'm really using my hand here to feel whether or not there's any higher low spots. But there's another way to tell, and I'm going to show you that next. Now we're going to talk about guide coating your work. If you've been around body work for any length of time, I'm sure you've already heard about this. If you're new, you may not be aware of this technique. And let me tell you, it really helps. It really helps to determine just how good a job you're doing before you go to all the trouble to, you know, prime and get ready for the final paint. But what this is, it's a special black coating. Now, you know, I'm giving a pitch here for a product just because this is a good one. This is called the SEM Guide Coat Black, all right? SEM Guide Coat Black. And, you know, you're probably going to have to get this at automobile specialty stores. The goal here is to put a light mist coating of black over this work right here. And then when I come in and block it, high spots will immediately disappear and low spots will stay. And if you block it just right, and I'm going to show this one up close so you can see what's happening. If you can block this entire area, and without a lot of work be able to get all the guide coat removed, then hey, you're ready for primer. And if not, you're going to have to maybe go back in and do a little more sanding or a little more filling and re-guide coat it to check it again. Now, a couple things about guide coat, okay? I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, why can't I just go to the hardware store and get a can of black lacquer, black enamel? Well, the problem with that stuff is it takes forever to dry, and if you try to sand it too soon, you know, it plugs up the sandpaper, and it just doesn't work as well as this. This can be sprayed on, provided you're at room temperature, and you can sand this almost immediately. Now, it does recommend application at 70 degrees. It's not quite 70 here in my shop. I did put this by the heater, the shop heater earlier, so this is nice and warm. Always don't apply this cold. And now I'm going to come in, I'm going to move my heat lamp in here and warm this fender up. I'll clean it, and then we'll come back and I'll watch. I'll be wearing my face mask, so I won't be able to talk much, but I think you can watch as I spray that first initial coat of this guide coat black.